You take a lot of care in your writing to discuss the philosophy of science, and I really appreciated that and how it's changed over time. But at the same time, quite early in the book, you recount a conversation with Stephen in which he told you at point blank that philosophy is dead. And this is something that I've heard a lot of people quote him on, but very few people have the sort of insight that you do into what he was thinking at the time. So I'm wondering what you think he had in mind when he said philosophy is dead.
Right, because of course Stephen's physics and certainly his cosmology is perceived as philosophically rather productive in certain ways. I think what he meant, at least that's how I understood it, is that philosophy without consideration of new scientific developments, new developments in his case in fundamental physics and cosmology, is sort of, walking blindly. He held this conviction that by delving deeper and deeper in the questions of science would ultimately prove more productive. In a sense, I think he felt that someone like Einstein, who failed to predict the expansion of the universe based on his philosophical prejudices, so that someone like Einstein had been guided too much by some sort of philosophical position. And I've always felt that he tried to sort of not take too much of a position and rather attempt to read what his physical theories were trying to tell him. On the other hand, I think it's also that statement, the statement that you're referring to, philosophy is dead. It's also, of course, a typical Hawkingian kind of exaggeration or controversial kind of statement, in which reflects, I think, to some extent, the discussions he had with philosophers, which hadn't always been particularly fruitful, in his opinion. So, as with many Hawkingian statements, this had a sort of a controversial, almost joking, poking side to it, and a serious side to it. Of course, and also, a final point perhaps is, I believe he made that statement long ago. The kind of how, in the 80s, I believe. I think that throughout my collaboration with Stephen, in which we stumbled upon this discovery that quantum theory allows for a whole new view of the cosmos, which we call, as you mentioned, which we call a top-down view, which we called a view from the inside. The whole new cosmology that we developed has philosophical implications. And I think Stephen himself has been quite surprised by these. So you see, it's a very complex statement, which I can't really summarize in sort of one or two lines. There are different sides to it.